Hello, everyone. Welcome to the April 11th edition of the ASP.NET Community Stand-Up. With us today, we have Davide, Mauri, Aaron
Hello.
Powell, John Galloway,
Happy to be here.
and myself, Mackinnon Buck. I'm a developer on the Blazor team. So today we're going to be talking about Data API Builder and how it can be used in the context of building a Blazor app. But before we jump into that, I'm going to go over some of the community links, and then we'll get right to the demo. So if we could share my screen.
Yeah.
Awesome. So first, what we have is .NET 8 Preview 3 was released earlier today. So if you're able to, please check that out and give us some feedback. We have a lot of cool new features in the Blazor space. So and a lot of them pertain to the Blazor unification effort that we've been talking about recently. So for example, server-side rendering with Blazor, rendering Blazor components outside of ASP.NET Core. And then we also have some other features that don't relate to the Blazor unification effort, like section support, which is pretty cool. The ability to monitor circuit activity, and also SIMD support is now enabled by default for Blazor Webassembly apps. You had to set a flag to turn that on before. Now it's just there automatically. So .NET 8 Preview 3, check it out. Tell us what you think. All right, so now let's get to the community links. So first we have a Blazor state management library. And if you're building a big complex Blazor app and you need some sort of state management solution that's not provided in the box, you can check out one of these external libraries or third-party libraries like this one, Blazor State. This one, from what I can tell, works kind of similar to the JavaScript Redux library. So if you're coming from the JavaScript space, maybe you'll know what I'm talking about. But yeah, so if you're looking for state management, check out this library. Next, we have a library called Bolero, and I thought this was really interesting. I saw a tweet about this, which is like about the release announcements for version 0.22. But before that, I had actually never heard of this, but it's really interesting. It's a way to build full stack applications in F#, actually. And it works like on the client side, it uses Blazor Webassembly. So you can actually build Blazor components using F#, which I thought was really interesting. So if you are an F# fan and want to use Blazor, there is a way for you to do it. It looks pretty clean, I would say. It's nothing like the Blazor syntax. It's using like F#, but if you're interested in that, if you want to build a full stack application in F#, check this out. It's a pretty cool option. Okay, next we have a blog post by Christopher Strube, and this is showing how to use SignalR and Blazor WASM to make a like a sticky note app. So it's like real time. It's super interactive, and I'll actually show this in a second because it's pretty cool. But this blog post walks through all the code used to create the app, kind of step by step. It's really nicely put together. I'll just kind of scroll to the bottom where the demo is right now. But definitely give this a read on your own when you have time. So here we have, oh, that's the GitHub repository. We'll check that out too. But here's the actual demo. Here. Oh, nice. It was actually updated recently. So it didn't actually, that's a cool touch. So anyways, I didn't do this. This was added just a second ago, probably. So that's cool, Christopher. Oh, nice. It's him, actually. Oh, wow. This is so cool. So, but anyways, it's synchronized across tabs. So if I go to different tabs, you can see updates instantly. Maybe it's hard to tell. But anyways, and then if you drag them around, it'll update on every client as well. But yeah, anyways, it's pretty cool.
It's cool that Christopher is on. Christopher, I don't know if I'm saying it right, but lots of cool stuff on his blog.
Yes.
And just like he's been doing a lot of cool stuff with SVG editors, and recently we featured the editor config wizard. So a lot of like really cool applied things using Blazor to build awesome apps.
Yep. Yeah, it's amazing. We have one of his projects. I feel like in the community links, every stand-up, it's really cool, some of the stuff he puts together. So, but yeah, so give this a look. It's pretty neat to check out. Next, we have a really amazing project by Jay Sakamoto. And this is a recreation of a product called Storybook, but for Blazor. So Storybook, and I haven't used it, so pardon me if my explanation isn't perfect, but it's a way to build kind of build and test like UIs by creating components in isolation of each other. Like normally when you're building an app, you have to worry about them running on all these, different contexts, different with like different localization and things like that, on different platforms. But what this allows you to do is run components in isolation and kind of interact with them, test them, change their settings and things like that. It's really nicely integrated, and it's really easy to create your own like Storybook project that's integrated with your own Blazor components. So I think this is a very impressive project. So it's definitely worth checking out if you think it's useful. And so yeah, finally we have a new edition of the book Web Development with Blazor, and this is by Jimmy Engstrom, and it was just updated from .NET 5 to .NET 7. So if you're looking for a resource to learn Blazor, this could be a good option for you. And that about wraps it up with the community links. So I think we're ready to jump into the main part of the show.
All right, what do you got?
Aaron, do you want to take it and start with?
Oh, now it's awkward because no one knows who's first, right? Well, I suppose, Davide, why don't we start by talking a bit about what that is for people that might not have come across it before we jump into demos. Just make sure people know what we're going to be showing them.
Yeah. Okay, so let me share my screen here quickly. This one. Too many screen here. Here we go. Window, entire screen. Here we go. Yep. And can you see my screen? Yes, right? Perfect. So what I would like to show today, and with your help also demo, is a tool or a service or a product. I don't know how to call it exactly, because this is a project we started open source. It's called the Data API Builder, and we just released last week 0.7. And it's a tool that you can run both on premises and on Azure, that basically takes your database, your existing database, be it relational or non-relational, because we support Azure SQL, Cosmos DB, MySQL, and Postgres, and turn it into a REST or GraphQL API. So it's very easy. As soon as you compile and define a configuration file, as you can see here, and the configuration file is needed mainly to allow Data API Builder to understand which table, view, store, procedure, or collection you want to expose, because maybe you don't want to expose everything, and what kind of security policy you want to apply. Basically, as soon as you have done that, you just type dub start, and the engine will start. Will read the metadata from the relational schema, or if you're using Cosmos, from GraphQL schema that you will provide. You will get the data from the configuration file, merge everything, and then basically start to listen to for HTTP request, so that you can send both REST request or GraphQL request. And for both GraphQL and REST, we support already for any object you expose, pagination, filtering, selection, and projection. So basically, all the CRUD operation that you would normally have to write on your own are taken care of already for you. Which, in my opinion, being a developer myself, really, if you have the right scenario, it really kind of make you 100% time more efficient, because you can just focus on the front end. You're really creating a very nice UX and user experience, and basically the back end is taken care for you. So I think it's pretty cool. We released almost a month ago, almost exactly a month ago, and so far we had a huge amount of feedback, all positive. Of course, we need to improve and evolve it, but yeah, I think this is a great tool for developers, and it will be great to show it with Aaron help today.
And I, as someone who does a lot of front-end applications, like Data API Builder like really fits the kinds of things that I build. I don't want to spend a whole bunch of time building up these backends, and you want to prototype out an application, and you've already got a database. Well, then you've got to build like an ASP.NET server, and you've got to build the data layer, you've got to add entity framework, and kind of all that stuff. When really you just want to visualize that data, and I think that's what Dab is like, and that's where it fits really nicely into the kinds of applications, particularly the Blazor application we want to kind of do a demo of today.
Yeah. And let's see if I forgot anything. No, of course. Well, it's on GitHub, so you probably already figured out it's completely open source. And what else is important to say? Yeah, we support, of course, authentication and authorization, both using just regular Azure or via using basically OpenID, Auth2, and JWT token. We also have support for row-level security, so you can specify exactly who will be able to see what. And that's it. Here, you can just go to, well, that's the website, or you can go to aka.ms/DAB. And then you can access the website here, the repository. Documentation is almost complete. So you have you even have a getting started guide, that can basically guide you through setting up a data API builder, using it, and just, try it on your own. And then you can run it on-prem, deploy on Azure. So you really have all the options available. But yeah, let's go on with the demo, Aaron.
Sure. So I just want to touch back on what you said. So authentication authorizations in there. And I think that's an important one. We're not going to be doing the auth stuff today, just obviously because then we need to set up an OpenID Connect server and like just a few other things, moving parts. But we're not giving you like an unfederated, unauthenticated access to like your database through a HTTP endpoint, because that's not a good idea. Make sure you secure your databases.
It sounds strange, but it's not.
Actually, so that's about I will not admit to have ever accidentally making that mistake myself.
That's really helpful. Like you were saying, all those things of like exposing a database, making setting up the REST endpoint, setting up all the stuff, and then doing it right, like you're saying, with authentication and all that. Cool.
No, but even the subtle thing, right? For example, retry logic. We already implemented retry logic because that a database may not be available. It's very rare, but on the cloud, you have to be prepared for a resource not to be available in a retry. So retry logic is already embedded. We are using Poly, .NET. All the best practices. For example, if you are into the GraphQL kind of community or discussion, that there is this issue called N+1 problem. We solved it already because we generate a query such in a way that you don't have to hammer database with 1,000 of requests if you are returning a list of objects. So I think it's very useful today. Just to make developers more efficient and avoid to always write the same plumbing code, which is not super fun at the end of the day.
So that's another question that I had, and I'll throw it out there. If you're already going to cover it, then you can just cover it as you. But the whole idea of scale, because that's often a thing when people worry about, like, an automatic API being built for me, and then it's not going to scale well, So that's definitely something I'm interested in hearing about.
Yeah. So from a scalability perspective, you have two options. Right now, this is an open source project, but also a public preview in Azure. We partnered with Static Web Apps so that you have a completely and full end-to-end serverless experience, where basically you just deploy the API builder and we will take care of, just like any serverless service, we'll take care of scaling it up and out to make sure that it reacts correctly and it is able to handle the workload you're throwing at it. Now we are in public preview, so the ability to scale up and out is limited, but that's the idea for when the service hosted on Azure, what we call the managed service, will be available on Azure in GA. Now, you have another option otherwise. Let's say that for any reason you just want to host it on your own, you can do it. It's available as a container, so you can run it on Kubernetes. You can run on your container instances, and then this is a completely stateless application. So it's very, very easy to make it scale out just by adding new container, and then you put a load balancer in front of it or an API management service, and basically you're done, right? So it can easily scale to the amount of instances you need.
Okay. Should we switch over to Aaron's screen? Or,
Yep. Let's jump over to my screen now. So now that we've got this thing that we can talk to the database for us. We're going to build a little application on using Blazor Webassembly that's going to do that. Now, if there are questions and stuff, jump in, ask them away as we're doing this. Same for people on the stream. I can see some stuff coming in on chat and things like that. But yeah, ask questions, because that's the only way that we can make sure we're actually giving you the knowledge that you're looking for. But so far, all I've done is I've just gone file new Blazor WebAssembly application in Visual Studio. I'm using .NET 6 because some of the dependencies are still pinned to .NET 6 that we're using, we're going to be using. But hopefully, as .NET 8 rolls out, we could upgrade to that and take some of the new features that are there. But we're still sticking with long-term support of .NET 6 at least for today.
You probably need to bump up your font size a bit or your resolution.
I have done that for the text, like
For
the
the
stuff
code
in the
part.
Solution Explorer is not really, I guess, overly relevant. But yeah,
Cool.
as I jump around to actual text, and I'll jump into terminal and I've got that font size up. So hopefully that's readable. But yeah, do let me know if that needs to be addressed. Yeah. So like I said, got this thing scaffolded up, and Davide has kindly set up an instance of Dab running in Azure for me. And let's just have a quick look at what that does for you first before we try and build off the top of it. So you can imagine that this is kind of it's either an existing database or you're working with like a database team and you're building the front end of it. It's like, well, like, what's it look like? Like, what's the contracts? And because I'm a huge fan of GraphQL, I'm going to do this using GraphQL. And I've got Banana Cake Pop, which is a GraphQL IDE sort of thing. Like, kind of like, think of like Postman and stuff like that, but specifically for GraphQL. So if I come to this document that I've got open here, what it's done, I've connected to the hosted version that Davide has provided me, and I can have a look at a GraphQL schema. So here it is, and here's a bunch of stuff that's been generated for me. And that is correlated to this SQL database schema that I've got here. So let's put that up one more. So I've got tables, I've got views, and I've got stored procedures. Kind of things you'd expect in a SQL server, right? These are then made available to me in GraphQL. So I've got some GraphQL queries. So these are read operations. If you're coming from like a REST background, think of this as like the read aspect or the R in your CRUD. So like get by primary key, and then we've got down here like get like authors. So like get all authors or get a single author. And with the with get all authors, I can provide a filter. So I can do like filtering, and that's turned into a SQL query that is then executed. So like it actually breaks down a complex filter operation into like an optimized SQL query for you. And then we've got a few other things in here around working with some of the other database tables and things like that. We've also got mutations, so for doing changes to the database. So whether that's a create, an update, or a delete. You'll see that again, we've got our create author, create book, we've got delete author, and then we've got down here a few which are wrapping around our stored procedures. So we can actually expose those stored procedures that we've got in our database as operations that our client can execute without having to write all this mapping logic. Like it's just generating that mapping logic for us, which is pretty neat. So let's just go like query get books, and we'll call books. And just go ID, title. Actually, no, sorry. So this is going to return me like a collection. So we have this items collection because it's also paginated. I can get the end cursor. So like, are we at the end? Sorry, is that for pagination? So for the next items and are there next pages and things like that. But the items is going to be books. So we'll get the ID, we'll get the title, and maybe we'll get the authors for that book. And then again, this is going to give me an array of authors. And from that, I can go got my squiggly brackets. From here, I can get the ID, the first name, and say last name. And let's execute that. Okay, like that's just perform the query. Like I haven't written any SQL code or like any database logic here. I've just said, like here's a graph of data that I want to work with. Like figure out how to turn that into your database query statements. And that's like, as someone who does, like I said, predominantly front end, that really appeals to me. I don't have to learn SQL. It's been a long time since I've done much with SQL, so I know there's joins and stuff like that, but that's someone else's problem. Is Davide shaking his head? He had to write the database for me, and I'm like, I haven't used the stored proc in a very long time. How do I connect those? How do I execute those?
No, but that's fine. The goal of this project is to make data people and developers friends again. So
exactly. All right, cool. So let's get back into setting things up. So it's all great. Like this is obviously hosted in Azure, but what if I'm not ready to have this deployed somewhere? I'm doing local development, or I want to do local development. Well, we have created a command line tool for working with Dab locally. So we can install that with .NET tool install. I think it's Dab. I should, but no.
I think it's
wait.
Microsoft .NET API Builder.
Yes.
Yep.
Microsoft. There we go. Hey, I saw it. That's Microsoft.
And then apparently you also have some new
data.
.NET version installed. Yep.
I also spelled install wrong. That's why there we go. Cool.
Oh.
So that's installed it. And now I can do something. Let's bring up to the top of the screen again. And if we do .NET dab help. So these are kind of like things we can do from the command line. So we can initialize a configuration file, because we need a configuration file, and that's going to tell Dab where the database is, what to expose for your database, because you might have tables in your database you don't want to expose. So you kind of use that as a bit of a basic mapping. It's also where we set up our authorization and authentication rules, stuff like that. I've actually gone ahead and set up that. Davide mostly set it up, that config file. And this is what we end up in here. And I'm going to offend everyone that doesn't like light theme Visual Studio. I already seen someone mentioned that in chat, because I'm a Visual Studio by defaults. I haven't changed anything except I turn on the white space to really get on people's nerves. So yeah, I've got data source configured. So that's where we say this is Azure SQL or MySQL or Postgres or Cosmos NoSQL options. Then we configure things about the runtime. Like, do we want REST enabled? You can actually disable REST or GraphQL. If you only want one of those, you're never going to be communicating via REST, you can disable REST or GraphQL alternatively. What is the endpoint you want it to be exposed via? By default, they'll be at /API for the REST, /API/ and then we build out a REST semantics of that, or /GraphQL. But if you want something different, you can modify that in here. I'm just running the development host here because this is for local dev, but you can change that for production, and it just does some optimizations and things like that. What's the authentication provider? Because this is local and we're not really using it anyway, I've just got it set as static web apps. And then our entities. The entities are really the important part here, because they're the things in our database that we're exposing to Dab. So I'm exposing an author here, and that will be, so there's the database schema and table that we're going to be located at. So dbo.authors, permissions. Like I said, we're being kind of lazy here and just putting everything out as unauthenticated. But you probably shouldn't do that in production. And then we can define relationships. So authors has a many-to-many relationship to books, because a book can have many authors, and an author can write many books. So we can set up a relationship, and we can have as many relationships as we want, again, to represent what you've got in your database. And what's the cardinality of that? Like I said, this is a many-to-many, and it's got a linking object between them. So this is the table in the database that does the mapping between the two. And then we've got this repeated for a few things. So we've got our book that's defined here. Just for illustration purposes, I've exposed the book author table as well, so you can see how that works. We've got a author book count, so that's actually exposing a view out of there. And then what fields do we provide to the view for querying and things like that. And then down further, stored procedures. Now, this is obviously a large amount of JSON to try and write. We do have a JSON schema, so you will get some IntelliSense support in Visual Studio and tools like that. But also the stuff that you can do from the command line, such as with like dab add or update. So we can add new entities, we can update existing entities and things like that. But I really only need to run dab start here because I've already got this up and running. So this is going to start up the emulator locally, and you'll see that it's doing a bunch of stuff. It's just it's connecting to the database. It's understanding the database schema in there, mapping that through to our runtime config there that we've got, and that's all up and running on port 5001, which I also have here, and that's connected. And so yeah, there's our schema, exactly as we had in that hosted version. But now, like, this is just all running locally with local SQL database and things like that. So let's start integrating this into Blazor. And for that, I'm going to do this as GraphQL. Like, is everyone cool with us doing GraphQL? I think that let's go full modern. Yeah, we'll go GraphQL. And I did realize that I don't have enough tabs open here, so let's open up another tab. And PowerShell, there we go. Blazor. Blazor Stream. And I'm going to install an open source library for working with GraphQL in .NET from an open source project called Chili Cream. Chili Cream. For anyone that hasn't come across them, if you're doing GraphQL on .NET, they have a heap of different stuff. They have a GraphQL server if you wanted to fully build your own GraphQL server. It's actually Hot Chocolate is actually what we use to power the GraphQL aspect of Dab. Banana Cake Pop is the IDE that I was using, and Strawberry Shake is their GraphQL client library. So we'll see that they have some excellent docs and a bunch of videos and stuff on getting started with this. But we're going to grab their command line tool, strawberryshake.tools. Install that here. Excellent. And then I've already created my application. So we're going to then install the strawberryshake.blazor package. So let's come into the Blazor library, .NET, add package. That will install. Excellent. And the final thing we need to do is we need to initialize initialize Strawberry Shake for working with our GraphQL endpoint. So I'm going to run this command, .NET GraphQL init. I'm going to give it the localhost version. I need to give it a name for it. It's going to do a bunch of code gen for me. So a name for like the GraphQL client library that's going to add to my project. I'm going to call this library client. And I'm in the current directory. So we'll just say that the project is located in the current working directory. So that's gone and downloaded my GraphQL schema and then added a bunch of stuff in. So if I come back over here, we'll see I have a GraphQL RC file, which has got some information such as, there's the name of that library. And then it's downloaded the actual GraphQL schema from our GraphQL server. And it's a few hundred lines of GraphQL in here, which has got all of our various types. And it's going to use that to do code gen. Another thing I'm going to do is, by default, it will generate stuff without namespaces. So I want to just generate a namespace, and we'll call this book library. There we go. And we compile this up. It will start doing code gen for us. Excellent. Everything compiled, so demo's still going good. Everything's still compiling. But I need to add GraphQL to the project. So we are going to add a GraphQL service. So services.add, and then if we do library, to be library client, it hasn't picked up my IntelliSense, which means that I'm just going to reopen the project. Sometimes I find that the code gen stuff doesn't get picked up by Visual Studio immediately. Closing the project and reopening happens to make it work better. And I'm going to eat my words when this doesn't actually fix anything. Add library client. It didn't fix anything. Yes. It's all right. We'll figure this out in a minute. Yes, there's nothing like live demos, is there? Like, yeah, nothing like doing live demos. I'm just going to copy another chunk of code that was. Oh, actually, I know why it didn't work. Is I haven't actually done any code gen because I haven't added anything for our client to do. So it's not going to generate a client that can't do anything. So what we need to do is we need to, because GraphQL, we write these queries or mutations. So like I had here, did like query get books, and then books where we get the items and oops, where's my squigglies? There's the squigglies. ID, title, year, and then pages, authors, items, and we've got first name and last name. Right, so because we write a query like this, and we have this structured query to start with, what we need to do is we need to add that to our project so that we can actually generate the code to execute that query. Think of this, I guess, like if you're using like OpenID spec file and you're generating a .NET client from your Swagger document. It's that kind of thing here. So let me create a folder. I'm going to call them operations because it's common terminology in GraphQL. Operations are the things that you're performing as a GraphQL server. We'll call these queries, and let's add a new item. We'll call this get books.graphql. Save that. And now if we do .NET, if we compile that, now it should have generated the client library. Third time's the charm, right? Services, add library. There we go. Excellent. There's the library client. Yay!
Woohoo!
Yep.
I've got my stream. It's been a while since I've done a live stream, but I've got my stream deck still set up with all my
nice.
my voice stuff on there. All right, and then I'm just going to configure the endpoint that's at, because you might have different endpoints, whether it's like localhost and you're like local development versus production. So you could use like the ASP.NET stuff for doing like config files and swapping out this HTTP endpoint. I'm just going to be lazy and do hard-coded one of 5000/GraphQL. Okay, cool, done. So how do we use that? We've added something. So let's take one of these pages in here. Actually, we'll get rid of the counter and fetch data. We don't need the default pages, and we're going to add a new Blazor file, and we'll call this books.razor. Okay, and we want to use that operation that we've done. So so we want to execute this query against our GraphQL server, and there's a couple of ways we can do that. We could use actually, is it page/books. We could do like a was it at inject library client. Oh, actually, let me just add these to the imports. So we're going to do that should have been there. Library client using book library. And then so we could do like library client. So we could do like an at import, and then inside of say our override of on initialized. Yeah, where's my on initialized override? On initialized async. Okay, fine. I'll get Copilot to just write it out for me. Look at that. Copilot's done it. close, not quite. But so we could get the library client, and then we can do get books. So I can do it this way, and this is then going to give me the get books, which I can then execute async, and then get those back. And you'll see that these are strongly typed. We get it to not do var. No, my control dot's not working. But you can possibly see that, but probably not. That's giving me an operation result of I get book client result. So this has actually done a whole bunch of code gen for me. So that's something, and then I could assign that to a property. But the Chili Cream team have actually created something that makes this a little bit easier, which is with the they've created some components for us. So this is part of the code gen. So I can use a component called get book clients, get books. Actually, let's check this using statement into my imports. So we can just clean that up a little. Using that. Actually, we'll do an using of book library. There we go. Okay, I don't need that anymore. And then I can get rid of that. Okay. So I guess I've done a lot of stuff with React over the years. So like this kind of a thing sort of looks familiar from a React hook standpoint, I guess. But yeah, it's a Blazor component that I can then provide things like the what is it when it is content, the child content. That's it. And so then this is what's going to be executed when that operation has completed on our server. So let's say the context. I'm going to have a look. I'm trying to write this from memory, and it's still early here in Australia. Context, yeah, context. That's what I'm after. Context equals, and we'll call this result. Oops, result. There we go. Okay. Oh no, sorry. The context isn't on there. It's on the. Context should be here. Okay. So what do we want to name the results object that we're getting in here? It's going to be that. And then we could add, so we could render this out as like a table with like a TR. Okay, let's do something super simple like that. Okay, so and what do we get when we are on our results object? Results is going to come back with some books. And then books is going to have items. And then we'll see that book item doesn't have a title, publisher, etc. But it does have a title. And we could say like td at book dot yeah. Okay, so that is how we've we can generate stuff like really easily off the like there, and it's all strongly typed. It's all now compile safe, and we're going to see if this does actually launch the demo. Fingers crossed. It's not download all the. I forgot to turn off symbol debugging, so it was going to download like all of .NET. Cool. Okay, so that's loading. Just zoom in. Let's open the dev tools just so we can see what's happening inside of, say, our network tab. Bring that across, and because I haven't set up the routing in the let's say, was it book or was it books? It was books, wasn't it? There we go. Okay. Well, we pulled data out of our database. Wow. Excellent. And if we jump over to like our network tab, we can see here's the GraphQL call that we've done. That's the operation that we performed. So that's the get operation. And then we'll see there's the preview that's come back. Here's the items, there's the books, there's the book ID, there's the pages. And there's the authors, so we could so we can list out all the authors and all sorts of stuff like that. Yeah, I think that's a pretty easy way to have just connected to a database and done a read operation. I did see a question in the chat. Will the demo be available afterwards? Yes. Yes, this demo is, I will put a link to it. We haven't written a README or anything for it, but if you just want the really raw code of the demo, I can get the team to pop that up on screen. But if you want to actually wait till write a README on how it works, maybe wait a little bit. Yeah, because it's very raw at the moment. Yeah, cool. So that's read operations. But what about a write operation? So let's add another item in here. And we're going to do, actually, I want a new folder first. We're going to add a new folder called Mutations. And then we'll do let's create do new book, yeah. Create book.graphql. Okay, so for this one, we would use the mutation feature, and we'll call this create book. And then we're going to call the create book mutation. But this, if we have a look at our schema reference for mutations, create book is going to require a create book input, which has an ID, the pages, the series it's in, string, and int. Now, we don't need to provide anything except for string, because string is non-nullable, indicated by the exclamation point on the end. But we need to provide everything else. So the ID would be auto-generated for us because it's got an auto-generated ID database field, but we could provide one if we wanted to. If we didn't want to add this to a series, we wouldn't provide it with a series ID, things like that. So for this, we would say, so that we can use this multiple times, we create a variable and we'll call this input, and that will be a create book input. And that is going to be non-nullable because we need to provide input. And then this item is going to be $input. Input. Come on, there we go. And we'll get back the ID just as an example. Okay. So we'll create that mutation, recompile so that Strawberry Shake is able to do the new code gen. And then let's add a new item, and we'll call this create, call this new book.razor. And we'll pop this at, say, the route of page/book/new. And then this could just be any old editor form sort of thing like you would previously have done. I'm just going to quickly bring in some code from one I prepared earlier. This time I'm injecting the library client because I'm going to be performing an update operation. I'm saying that this is an edit form, and we're going to have a model and a handle submit method. And let's just grab that code because I forgot to include that in my copy. So I've just created a little little data object for the UI here. So it's going to have the title, the year, and the page count. And then we're going to new that up as a private field of this component so that we can bind that as the model of the editor form. And then we're going to have a handle submit function that if you didn't provide a title, then we're just going to exit. Is where you do your validation and all that sort of stuff. Demo code. Let's skip validation. But what we will be doing is on handle submit, assuming that we've passed validation, we're going to call library client create book, execute async, provided with a create book input. Again, this is all code gen stuff. I haven't had to write any of this, and then I'm just providing it with the fields that we've entered, and assuming that wasn't null, wasn't an error, we're going to then return to the homepage. So let's fire this up and see if that part of the demo has also worked.
Well, it's spinning up. There's a question here about other ways to draw tables. And one thing that came to mind,
Yes.
I'm not sure why this wouldn't work, but is the new Blazor Quick Grid is pretty handy for doing tables.
Yes. So in the sample that that I've done beforehand, I am actually using that quick grid component to do the UI, but because I was because it's currently pinned at .NET 6, just for like dependencies on Strawberry Shake and a few things like that. It's using like a really old version of quick grid in the demo. But yeah, you can 100% use quick grid for this. Also in the sample that that I'll share out, I've got the Blazor Fluent UI component library included. So like, let's say that you want to pick the various authors that are going to be attached to the book. Well, how do we do that as a multi-select? Maybe we want to use like a UI library. So I'm using that with Fluent in this case and stuff like that. So yeah, it's 100% doable. Bring in whatever other components that you want. Obviously, I've used the component they generated for doing that initial query, but then inside child component, yeah, anything that can take a collection, because at the end of the day, it's an enumerable collection of results that you get back from your operation that you've performed. Yeah, you can bind that to any UI component you want. All right, let's see. Okay, here is my new book form, and I said I do a lot of front end, and you can tell that from the beautiful UI I've done here. It is amazing. Like CSS, eat your heart out. But yeah, like this could be done with like any CSS library that you want, like and stuff like that. But yeah, obviously this is demo code, so we've done it as quickly as possible. All right, so a book title. I'm going to use the title of this lovely book that's behind me, Professional ASP.NET Ajax 2.0. What is it? Professional ASP.NET 2.0 Ajax, because that shows how old I am in terms of building ASP.NET web applications. I actually don't know when this was published. I'm going to say like 2007, and there's probably like 400 pages in that. Let's hit save, and oh, we've had an error. And of course we have, because we're coming towards the end of the demo. And it hasn't liked something about the ID. Oh, I think it's got it. It's not liking something about the ID. Let's hard code an ID just for demo. I want to prove that I can create a new entry in the database. ID. We'll just do let's go 5,000. Right, let's do a really big number. Oops. There we go. And it's the person who's used to writing JSON, putting colons in when there should be equals. I need to remember to turn off symbol servers and stuff like that. Okay, book/new. Let's bring in. Remember my decision. Open the dev tools. Okay. Professional ASP.NET Ajax 2007. 100. Let's hit save. And woohoo! There we go. It did create the book. And then if we go back to /books, oh, why there's a rogue debugger statement in there. Aha! Right down the bottom here, we'll see a brand new book has been added. Success! We're able to do like kind of that full like end-to-end CRUD. Obviously, like we haven't got to things like store procedures. I did want to get a store procedure demoed, but I'm aware that we're nearly at the top of the hour, and as far as I'm aware, we're only running to the top of the hour. I know it depends how long everyone's going to leave me to just like with an unmoderated mic, because I've got it's the start of my day here. I could keep going.
No, this is great for seeing the simplicity, and then just also like having the autocomplete everywhere is really nice. So you're seeing like autocomplete in your GraphQL and then in your component, and you know what I mean, throughout the entire application. So you're not misspelling, author name or whatever. So that's really cool. I can see a lot of applications, but especially something like an internal, like a line of business application where I'm, internally to an enterprise, I'm updating, a list of widgets that we have for sale or whatever, So,
yeah, exactly. And like this idea of being a rapid prototype as well, I think that's another thing that this can be really cool for. Not saying that there aren't like production style scenarios and stuff like that, but being able to go, like we've got a database backend, but how would we build it out a UI based off of this? And like quickly building out a rapid prototype using that and things like that. I think that's something that is really it opens so many doors having a tool like Dab in your toolbox, so that you can just take an existing database and expose it in ways that you hadn't previously been able to access it, or reduce the amount of development time it takes to make something available, and then focus on the UI component and build out from that without worrying about the nuances of your database until maybe you do eventually hit a point where you need to fine tune some SQL queries. And that's where you bring in views and stored procedures, or you need to be able to scale differently. And that's where you look at bringing in some custom backend for those specific aspects of your project. That's the GitHub repo. As you can see, it's very populated. It's because there is a separate branch where the Blazor demo is currently living. Today, I'll clean this up a bit, put in a README. We'll merge this into the main branch. But yeah, if people want to straight off this stream, you want to jump in and have a look at it, you'll find this here. There's the database is in there. It does have a README on how to deploy the database. We've provided the data API builder schema there and the Blazor library. And you'll see that has a few things in it, such as the pages for books, which is using QuickGrid, as you'll see there.
Cool. One of the nice things about static web apps is that you can deploy them relatively easily too, right? So I assume that's something that's like you've been showing everything developing locally, but that's also a nice feature, is to be able to quickly get those deployed too.
Yes, exactly. And Davide mentioned this earlier, but we did create a way of it is available through static web apps for deployment of data API builder. So you can build your Blazor application using Blazor Webassembly, push it static web apps with your Blazor your dab config file, and it will connect that straight through to your backend. I've actually written a blog post. That's this one up here on screen. Of how you do that, like how you can build a Blazor-backed static web app, a DAB-backed static web app with Blazor, Blazor WebAssembly.
So that's
or you can do it with F#.
Yeah, I had read that blog post, and in my mind, I was connecting like, oh, this is static web apps, but that's you were showing just straight up Blazor, but that's definitely something that does integrate well. I'm sharing the link there too.
Yeah.
Wow, cool.
Yeah. Because you can host Dab in anything, like because it ships as a container image, you can host that in an app service or in container instances or container apps or AKS. You can inject that into part of a bigger application. And obviously, I'm talking kind of a bit beyond just Blazor here, but you can imagine like any application that needs UI, like a Maui application. You're building maybe a mobile application. You could have Dab as your backend for a Maui application quite easily.
Cool. Speaking of different options, there's a question about plans for other databases.
Yeah, so far we support just in quote, because basically they cover I would say 80% of the market, probably if not more. Azure SQL and Task SQL Server if you run on premises, Cosmos DB, Postgres, and MySQL. The question is specifically about Snowflake. We don't support Snowflake at the moment, just like we don't support Oracle. We focus more on the database for which we have a first-party support in Azure. But given that the product is open source, there is nothing stopping you from adding support to it. So if that is important for you right now, please go and contribute. At the moment, we want to stabilize the product, so we don't think we are getting more support for additional database until the end of the next year. Next year we see, but just to be clear, so where what is in the roadmap. There was other couple of interesting questions, if you don't mind. The one was someone earlier mentioned that this looks like Firebase or Supabase. Yeah, you're right. And honestly, all the product that tries to turn a database into an API looks similar to me at the end of the day. I think the advantage we have here is that this is going to be tightly integrated in the Azure ecosystem, like with static web apps, that make it super easy to deploy, right? And other than that, it's just, in quote, a tool that takes your database and generates a REST API for you. So it's not rocket science, but it's very practical, I would say. So yes, there are other tools. I'm happy that there are more competition in the market, but yeah, I think for Azure this is really the best one, because it's going to be super integrated with everything. I don't know if there are other questions. Let me take a look.
It looks like there's a question about that component that was being used to fetch the books, I think. They're asking if there's an easy way to show loading indicator before the content shows up.
Yeah, so you'll see this in the full set example on my GitHub, but it generates, there's two other components that you can provide into that that use get books or use whatever. There's an error content. So what happens if something errored out with your request? And then there is a loading content. So you can provide whatever child content you want to display, and the component itself will take care of the various states that the request to the GraphQL server goes through. Loading, show your loading content, error content if there's an error, or the child content, when it was successful.
Awesome.
So just take the last, I see there is another question coming in about OData support. We don't have any plan right now to support OData, but you are not the first that ask us for OData support. So that is being put in the roadmap. The roadmap is public. If you go to the GitHub repository, in the discussion, the roadmap is pinned. OData is mentioned, is one of the things we will need to take a look after August. Until August, we already have a defined roadmap. For example, adding support to caching, adding support to OpenAPI. So until August, we already have our defined goals. After that, we'll review anything that came from the feedback. And yeah, if data is what people want, why not? Oh, yeah, perfect. Thank you for posting the link. Yeah, let me see. Yeah.
I think that's about it. Yeah. All right. Yeah, people are happy with this. This is definitely interesting for me. I can definitely see using this.
Yeah,
that's cool.
I love how declarative all the Blazor side of things looks, rather than having to wire things up all manually. It's super clean. Very cool.
Yeah. Very cool. All right. Well, I think, you've shared out all the links where people can go and learn more. I do like that. I was going through today some of the quick starts and tutorials, and you've got things covering a lot of different databases and scenarios. So
yeah, I think one of the nice thing about this is that if you have a different data states, so you have a little bit of MySQL, SQL Server, and GraphQL, and Postgres, this will make everything easier to access, because unless you have specific requirements, all API will look the same, which is great, because then as a developer, it's just easier.
All right. Well, should we wrap up there?
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, everybody. This was awesome.
Have a great day. Thanks, everyone.